every Friday, Julie and I select somebody, ask somebody, invite somebody to be our Friday superstar. Now, sometimes this is a top-producing Harris Real Estate University student. Sometimes it's a famous author. We've had plenty of authors. Sometimes it's a CEO or a president of an asset management company or a bank. Really, what we seek out is someone who is going to have some information that's going to, frankly, help you in your business, help you to put you in a position where you can help others, be of service to others, and make money. Remember, guys, Julie and I are certainly supporters of the, real estate industry. We're certainly supporters of the National Association of Realtors. But truthfully, our main focus isn't the industry on a whole. Lots of other people are worried about that. Where we focus is the agent. We are truly, our passion, if you ask us where our passion lies, it's with helping the agent. It's being essentially an entrepreneurial, a coach for entrepreneurs, because that's, at the end of the day, what you guys are. You're small business owners. And I don't know if you ever considered yourselves that way, but that's truly what you are. So when Julie and I and we when we're selecting our superstars to feature every week, we keep in mind the fact that we are speaking with small business owners, and maybe in some cases reluctant small business owners. So today's superstar is Mr. Bryan Tutas, and Bryan is in Florida. So Bryan, welcome to the call.
Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you inviting me to participate with you guys today.
It's my pleasure. So I know Bryant because Bryant was a student a long time ago, and he was also, I frankly know Bryant probably better from Active Rain. I mean, I read his posts on Active Rain. He's always a very supportive commenter on our posts on Active Rain. So he's somebody I've kind of gotten to know in the ether, opposed to, I think this is the first time you and I have talked, isn't it, or have we spoken before? I mean, this is prior to the pre-interview.
No, that was the very first time, Tim.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So
it took us so long.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Bryan, do you have us on speakerphone?
I actually have you on an iPhone and an earbud. Is it echoing?
Well, it's okay for me. If you guys are having any problem, because this call's got close to 1,000 people on all over the country, and sometimes the call quality deteriorates a little bit, but they'll let us know in the webinar. I promise you that. So, okay. By the way, webinar, if you guys have any questions during this free call, I want you to go ahead and put those questions into your webinar screen, and those will be the questions that I use when interviewing Bryant. So, Bryant, let's just jump right in. Who are you? Where do you sell real estate? Give us a little bit of background, because you've been in this game for a long time, haven't you?
Well, I've been selling real estate for about 15 years. I'm an independent broker. I opened up a brokerage, my wife and I did, about 13 years ago. We're home-based. We've always worked out of our house, and we're actually located in a huge plan unit development called Point Siena, Florida, which is right in central Florida, about 25 minutes south of Disney World.
Okay.
Is where we work and sell real estate.
So I would think that your real estate market, I don't know if it was where the depreciation real estate crash started, but it was definitely one of the primary places that it hit when it did hit back in 2007. What's the depreciation been like in your market? What's happened to your market?
It's in the toilet. It was, well, as you know, real estate is very, very local. So even Point Siena, the specific plan unit development, now it's a huge place, 75,000 people and about 12,000 homes. So our values at the peak of the market, which was about mid-2006, the average sales price was about $2.25. Right now, it's right at $70,000.
Well, but even in the bubble, Bryan, your market was actually for Florida, for something that's relatively close to a major attraction, was pretty affordable, really.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why we got so busy. In fact, most of our buyers were coming up from South Florida, where they were priced out of the market. Coming down from New York, we had a lot of international buyers, and a lot of them were buying them to flip. We had a huge investor influx, in 2005, 2006.
So you guys must have had a ton of vacant homes, even back in the bubble, because people would buy them and never live in them, right?
Well, that's correct, and what it is most of them were new construction, because it was when they planned out Point Siena, it was all the streets, all the lots, they're all developed lots, so individual builders could just come in, put up a model home, and start building houses. So yeah, it was something, and remember in mid-2004, summer of 2004, we had 3 direct hits from hurricanes.
Yep.
Point Siena was devastated. So we had a very, very short really a boom period, which was really only about 2 years that we really got the majority of our business. But yeah, tons and tons of vacant properties and flips that flopped.
So we went from 225 down to 70,000. How many homes are there total in Point Siena?
Total in Point Siena, there's about 12,000 houses.
Wow, that is a huge planned subdivision, isn't it? That's a development, really. It's not a subdivision. Yeah, wow, amazing. And so with that kind of depreciation, I'm just, this is kind of a wild guess, but with 12,000 homes with that kind of depreciation, is there really, other than the people that paid cash, you've got to be looking at essentially your whole community being upside down?
Pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much right. It's very, very rare. Well, no one that bought, unless they purchased a home in the last 12 months. Well, even then, we're still declining. So even if you purchased it last month, you're probably upside down today.
Okay, well, Brian, now you and I, we are okay talking about things that aren't necessarily lockstep barrel in, with regards to the overall national real estate parlance, right? So if you and I talk about some things that are a little bit controversial, are you okay with that?
Perfectly fine.
Okay, so are you saying it's a great time to buy?
No, I do not advertise that way. However, we deal a lot with international investors, and if they're paying cash for houses, then it's a pretty good time to buy because they can certainly get 8 to 10% on their money.
Okay, so that's actually, let's stop right there because that is a really, really good point, a fantastic point, matter of fact. You're saying it's a great time to buy, and truly, if someone could buy something for $70,000 and rent it out for, $1,000 plus a month, then heck yeah, it's a great time to buy. But yeah, so it's a great time to buy if you're an investor and you're looking for a good cash-on-cash return. Excellent point, my friend. But as far as like a normal homeowner who's going to live in it, if you're telling me the properties are still depreciating, I mean, at $70,000, Bryant, how much lower can they go?
Well, that's a good question, Tim. I actually said that probably early 2009 when they were down to about 95,000. And I said, well, how much lower can you go? And these building lots, just to put it in perspective, back in 2006, just the lot would cost you about $70,000 or $80,000.
Wow, it's amazing. It truly is amazing. So
it's incredible.
Do you think your market, and again, I sense the fact that you are relatively objective in all of this, but do you think your market is overcorrected?
No, not really. I mean, most of the people that actually, the reason we got out of whack is because the people that were buying the houses were not living in Point Siena.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were strictly buying them for investments to flip them. And when you're down in South Florida and you look at a 2,800 square foot home that's brand new, and down in South Florida it's $600,000-$700,000, and you can buy it here for $200,000. It sounded like a great opportunity, right? They buy it for $200,000, put it back on the market for $300,000, and they're ready to roll. Well, the problem is the end users of these properties are, it's a working class neighborhood. Folks work at Disney World and hotels and motels, and, they don't make enough money to be able to spend more than $100,000 on a home. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's a very huge family. Half of our population is under the age of 18.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a very family-orientated neighborhood. So the prices, I think now, are probably more in line with where they should have been to begin with.
Interesting.
They were inflated before.
But so here's what I'm hearing from Bryant, guys. If you guys, again, realtors across the country, pay attention to what this guy's saying. You can tell he's using some very sound logic. If I was a buyer or even a seller in his particular market, I'm going to want to list with this guy. He's not just saying it's a great time to buy to buyers, because you know what? It's not, unless you're basically planning on renting it out and just living and using the cash flow. And then you heard him say something else. I asked him a question, do you think it's overcorrected? And, I mean, how many realtors on this call listening right now would have said, yes, my market's definitely overcorrected? But he said no, because if we're looking strictly at the incomes and the, potential buyers going forward, those folks, I'm assuming are earning probably $35,000 to $40,000 a year, and so they can only qualify for a home that's going to be roughly $70,000 to maybe $100,000. So it makes sense that long term those property values, will stay the same. There's not going to be any sort of rapid depreciation unless there's a huge increase in incomes. Guys, that's how a real estate market works. That's actually what drives real estate values. Actual, honest-to-God demand, not made-up demand from a bunch of, investors trying to basically, buy the winning golden lottery ticket. So, Julie, as we're going through these questions, I'm curious, what kind of questions are people putting in? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking back to how all this started. First it was, what do you mean my house hasn't appreciated? Then it was, what do you mean it's worth what I paid? And then it became, it's depreciating. Then it's how far can it go? So, I think that this points to the case, and Bryant is a good example of this, of, changing, retooling your brain in this market and not worrying about exactly what's going on and just saying, hey, what is selling and why, and how can I be a part of that? It just makes sense that you change your business as you go. And look at how many, it seems like every 90 days or so, there's something new that's happening. We had to deal with loan mods last year, and now we're dealing with how all that went or didn't go. So, I'm interested to see. I've got a lot of students saying that they're tuned in, they're listening. I think they're digesting everything. I'm going through the questions now, Tim, but that's what I was thinking is, how much things have changed even in the past 6 months.
So, Bryant, when the market corrected, right, when did you really feel it? Do you remember, the actual month? Do you remember when it actually happened to the point where you were a little bit surprised? I mean, I assume it stopped abruptly in a market like yours.
Well, that's interesting, Tim. I actually, I probably didn't know it when it happened, but I have researched it, so I do know that it was actually June of 2006 was our actual peak and when things started going downward. But business was still very, very good, 2006, 2007, because you were still able to sell homes, even though they had declined. Well, I can't say they declined. They had declined from the listing prices, but they hadn't necessarily declined from what people purchased their properties for. Does that make any sense?
I understand completely. So basically, it had kind of, like you said, it had peaked. It wasn't appreciating anymore, and that creates a lot of uncertainty as far as what direction it's going to go.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So you said, Brian, I'm sorry to jump. You said in June 2006 is when you saw the market in your particular area sort of start to become unsettled, or at least the rapid appreciation, wasn't continuing. I'm kind of curious when you said that. Had you known that back in June of 2006, like if you'd been really paying attention to this, if you had, I'm sure you were really busy working with buyers and sellers, and the last thing you would have expected is, more than 50% depreciation. But had you known that then, I'm sort of curious, what would you have done differently?
Oh, boy. Jim, I probably would have, I have historically been always a listing broker. Rarely did I work with buyers even during the boom. It's just not something that I did. That is probably one of the major areas where my business has changed. We're probably doing half of our business now is buyer business. So I probably would have started switching that around a little bit quicker because there's always a buyer. There's always a buyer for a property.
At the right price.
At the right price, yeah. You can always find buyers. I mean, that's one thing about a real estate market. I mean, something's always selling somewhere.
Well, Brian,
Julie said, yeah.
Let's underline that point because, again, you're speaking as a broker, and I really appreciate it, and you're also speaking with someone that speaks with 3 agents every day, I can tell, because you're used to kind of clearing their minds with how you choose your words. So, guys, he really does make a great point again. So regardless of how bad the market gets, and Bryant and I are going to talk about what direction the market's headed and what he's doing to prepare for it and all that good stuff here in a second. But regardless of how bad it gets, okay, or how good it gets, really, there's always going to be a buyer. If you go into the MLS and you look into the MLS any month, any year, no matter, back in the Great Depression, of course there wasn't an MLS then, but you get the idea, you're going to see there were still people buying homes. So let's say worst case scenario, guys, the wheels totally come off the wagon, housing market now that has to stand on its own 2 feet, falls to its knees, whatever happens, right? Your worst case scenario type thing. There will still be literally millions of homes selling per year. There will still literally be tens of millions of commission dollars being earned. And, obviously a lot of agents that are going to be doing quite well because of this market. And Brian is an example of that. So regardless of how bad the market gets, remember, guys, homes are still selling. Please don't start convincing yourself that they're not. It's all about price. So, Brian, you want to emphasize that point for me?
Well, yeah, I actually do want to add to that, Tim. There's something. Properties are always selling, but it's important to know where they're selling. Just for an example, in my area in 2008, we went from having 100 to 150 sales a month down to 10.
Wow.
Okay, so it literally came to a stop. I don't care how good you are, if there's only 10 sales and there's several hundred realtors, you're going to be scrambling to find something to sell, right? So because of that, at that point, I also started expanding. I started going into different areas for two reasons. One is I needed to go where the buyers were buying, and number two, I had to go where the prices were higher. Mm-hmm. Because when you have a 70% drop in property values and a 60% drop in business, well, it's very easy to do the math that you just lost 85% of your income, right? So I had to not only go into different areas, I had to go into higher-priced areas that were more active. And I started doing that transition in kind of mid-2008.
So I'm curious, now that you are, you've kind of been through a major shock, right, in the real estate market, in your brokerage. That was a major shock, obviously. You adapted. Did you adapt slowly or did you adapt quickly?
In my mind, I feel that I adapted quickly. But the reality of it is I probably didn't. I'm a very optimistic person, and sometimes that gets me in trouble, right? I mean, even when the values were plummeting, I had enough confidence in myself that I could find those sellers that had the all-elusive equity in their house that were just going to love being listed with me so I could sell the property and make a ton of money. But the reality was they didn't exist anymore. So I was a little bit slow, and I had a lot of other stuff going on at the same time that kind of got me sidetracked, from the business part. It was just kind of a perfect storm of things going on in my life.
Well, but to your credit, and you can share with us the personal information if you'd like to. Is that something you want to talk about? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, I think I will briefly, Tim, but I don't want to do it. It's not something for pity or anything like that. I mean, the reality is we all have stuff, right? Everyone's got something in their life. And the difference is, being able to plow through it and stay focused on what you're trying to achieve as opposed to getting derailed and, sitting in a corner sucking on your thumb and waiting for something to happen because that doesn't work. So in 2008, on top of the business really starting to be difficult, I had a lot of health issues in my family with my wife, and I know she's listening in, and she'll probably come smack me upside the head if I say more than I'm supposed to. But basically, I almost lost her. She had many major surgeries. In the middle of it, broke a hip. In the middle of that, had some other difficulties, and it went for about 2 years. In fact, it went until about 2 weeks ago. So in the midst of all of that, I was trying to revamp my business, change directions. I had hooked up with a guy in France that started sending me tons of international referrals for buyers. And right when that happened, I was actually staying in a hotel room in Tampa because my wife was over there in the hospital for about a month. And so I had to hire agents that I'd never even met. I hired a couple of agents, sight unseen, trying to get them up and running, handling these international leads. So it was quite stressful. I'm trying to teach them the technology and stuff, but that's difficult to do when you're not there to give them hands-on training. But we plowed through all of that stuff, and then we started focusing more on short sales on the selling side and foreign buyers on the buying side.
So I think it's important, Bryan, and that we talk about, and your wife, I'm sure, is doing wonderfully now, and we all pray for her, and we all, you guys look wonderful in that picture. I've never had the honor or pleasure of meeting either one of you guys in person, but you seem like Julie and I's kind of people. So I'm sorry that you went through that, and I'm sure everybody else, and especially your wife, we're all sorry that you guys went through that, but thank God everything's going back in the right direction again. And I think really what this is, and the reason I think maybe it's important that you mention this, is because there's a lot of people, Bryan, that are going through the same stuff or have gone through the same stuff as you guys. I mean, there's a lot of, maybe it wasn't health related, but maybe it seems like everyone had it. Starting really, it seemed like early 2007, there's a lot of people. It has something to do probably with the average age of the average realtor in the country. A lot of stress-related illnesses, just a lot of interesting things happened at once. And, a lot of people thought they were standing alone, and they realized that our industry was going through a little bit of influx and deleveraging itself, and combine that with a lot of just other stresses in the economy. So, guys, he made his way through this. He's building his way back. He's no different, and now he's been able to become a top producer in really a very short period of time. I mean, Bryan, how many homes do you guys think you'll close this year?
We should close close to 70 this year. And this was kind of my turnaround year. Okay, last year I did about 40, and next year we'll probably do 100 or more.
Is it important that you do 100 or more for any other reason other than cash flow? Is there some other thing that's motivating you or drive you to sell that many?
No, not really. I've actually, in fact, when my wife and I first opened up our company, we certainly could have been major players, doing hundreds and hundreds of transactions, but we never wanted that. We wanted to have a nice business, working out of our home, enjoy life, and do the things that we wanted to do. And,
a lifestyle business, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not a manager. I'm not a people manager. Okay, so expanding. I mean, I could have hired someone, I guess, to take care of all of that, but there's a lot to be said for being small too. It gives you more freedom.
When did you realize that basically short sales were, bottom line, the solution to avoid foreclosure? Do you remember, how did you come about that? Because I know you enrolled in one of our short sale classes, and this was a while ago. But when did you really, was it one of those things where you just basically immediately accepted it, short sales are the way to go, or is it one of those, was it more of a learning process and kind of an acceptance process that's the direction you had to go in your business?
Yeah, I think, I kind of saw it coming. I started writing about short sales in 2006, okay? But they were kind of far and few between. They were still kind of sporadic listings. And then, 2008, well, I really didn't have a choice. After you meet with 50 sellers and everybody's completely upside down, you kind of have to figure out what you need to do to help them, right? These are my past customers and clients, and I couldn't leave them stranded. So I really decided to get more heavily into the short sales. And once I started doing it, it was a very, very short period of time to find out that not only was I good at it, but I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that immediately means you're slightly mentally unstable if you enjoy doing short sales.
I was about to jump in there and just make sure I heard what I thought I heard, that you were enjoying short sales. I wasn't sure. Maybe I've had too much caffeine. Just wanted to make sure. Clarify, could you?
Well, that's true, and there are frustrating moments, but to be honest with you, the short sales, at least from my opinion, and most of mine are Bank of America, just so you know, so I didn't choose an easy one to work with.
No, you did not.
But they're better. They're better, they're easier, and almost all of mine are investor-owned properties. Mm-hmm. So the thing I like about short sales, obviously, you guys know, you teach it and train it. Pricing is no longer an issue. Dealing with my seller calling me every day, wondering why I haven't sold his property, that's no longer an issue.
Commissions are no longer an issue.
Commissions are no longer an issue, and really never were. I think I've maybe had a bank once or twice try to lower it, but we were able to negotiate it back every single time. When you say commissions aren't an issue, it is kind of an issue because you can't make as much, right? You're kind of limited to the 6% that they're willing to pay you. So that was a price reduction for me.
And Brian, keep in mind that in many places in the country, 5% was the norm for a long time. And when, basically 6% became the rule with any Fannie or Freddie owned mortgages or insured mortgages, what happened then was basically that a lot of realtors got raises. So, but yeah.
Well, I wish I could say that in my area.
Yeah, but in your market, you're saying it was not abnormal to charge 7%.
Oh, or more. Yeah. We had low housing prices. When houses are $80,000, $90,000, or $100,000. Let's get real. You got to charge more money, right?
That's right.
Or just didn't make any sense. So, and still do. When at all possible. We got to make it up somewhere.
You and I think, are kind of on the same quest in a lot of cases, trying to get realtors to accept the fact that short sales really are the solution to help folks avoid foreclosure. And if just the fact that it's going to be a great way for them to make money doesn't motivate them enough, what you said was perfect. The fact is that you have to learn this skill to help people in your community. I remember, now this was a while ago, Julie and I were sitting down with, I think Julie helped me out here, was the president or the CEO of Keller Williams. Mm-hmm. And he said something to us that was very, significant, impactful on Julie and I. Mm-hmm. And he basically said that, guess what? He was from Texas, and he said, I'd been through a real estate crash in Texas, and I'd seen the effects that it has. Now, this was back in, I think, 06 or 07, and he said, I'd seen the effects that it has on families, on, people are thinking this is going to be an economic event, and it's really not. It's going to be a social event. And I remember I thought about that, and I realized how right he was, and now look at what's happened. It's not just about losing a home. It's about losing really, a lot more than that. And that's what really being good at short sales is about, because you do allow people to have a graceful exit from their home. You do allow people to have options. You do limit the liability and the potential damage, through deficiency judgments and the rest of it. You do make it so that they can buy a home again in 24 months, provided, all their other credits and gear. I mean, Bryan, short sales truly are the solution for folks, for struggling homeowners, for realtors. Why the heck are so many realtors and so many brokers, for gosh sakes, still so reluctant to do them? Any idea? Help me out here.
I think it's lack of knowledge. I think they read so much stuff on the internet or hear on the news about how only 20% of short sales close, and you and I both know that figure. That's not even close.
I have no idea where that. I heard that number too. Where does that number come from? I honestly have no idea.
Well, where it comes from, and they're not looking at it right? They're looking at a transaction instead of a listing. Now, as a listing broker and the listing agent stuff that I talk to, it's true that buyers walk from short sales and they don't stick around for the deal to happen. It's possible I might have to sell a listing 4 times, right, to get it closed. Well, if that's the case, if I'm on the buyer side and I'm looking at transactions and it took me 4 buyers, well, that's a 25% ratio or rate, right? But on the listing agent, it's my same listing, so I closed it 100% of the time. So I think it depends on who you ask. If you're asking the buyer's agent, yeah, they may very well only get 20% of their deals closed because they can't control them. Whereas the listing broker, any of the listing brokers I've spoken to, and I'm sure your students that are doing lots of short sales, all probably close 90% or more.
Well, I was about to ask you that. Why do you think, if there were like 2 or 3 things that a realtor that's successful at closing short sales at a high level does that other realtors don't, what would they be? And remember, this is the day and age of equator, right? This is the day and age of where short sales, Bryan, you were doing them back when Julie and I were doing them. They were a lot harder before.
Oh, my goodness.
People have no idea.
I can do an equator short sale. Takes me about 30 minutes.
Well, right, and so from submission to equator to a paycheck in hand, guys. Depending on who the investor is or the servicer is, the bank, you could be looking at a 30-day paycheck. Realistically, it's still like 45 to 60 days, but people don't get that. Agents don't get that. It is amazing how much it's changed and how easy it's become, and yet so many agents are still holding on to the idea that short sales never close. It's crazy.
I just had a Chase approval in 5 days.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's because the seller had already been going through a loan mod with them, had attempted to do a short sale on their own. So by the time I got the listing, she had already done all the work. Put it on the market, found a buyer the next day, and since I called Chase, they said send me a contract and a HUD. They approved it, and that was the end of it.
Nice.
So very, very simple. Bank of America, I think all of theirs now are within 30 to 45 days through the Equator system. They're very fast.
Was this on an investor property, or you said you're still dealing primarily with investors? Has that changed?
Almost all investor properties. I think maybe I've done 1 or 2.
So I'm curious. HAFA and Fannie Freddie's version of HAFA. If you guys don't know what HAFA is, just go to our blog, timandjulieharris.com, and click on videos, and there's a whole explanation. There's like 6 videos that's explaining HAFA. We had a great event with the National Association of Realtors, and it's all there, videos for you guys to watch so you can learn about HAFA. But basically, HAFA streamlines short sales. Doesn't apply to investors. How many of these investors that you're closing are dealing with deficiency judgments or threats of it or paybacks? How's that working?
It really 100% depends on their financial position. What I'm seeing is that if they have money, the banks are going to want some of it. If they have income, the bank's going to want some of it. If they don't have anything, they're going to let them go. I just did 3 properties for an investor, and the first one, 2 mortgages on it. The first one, he had to bring $1,700 cash contribution, and then they let him off completely. The second one, he had to bring a $5,000 cash contribution, and the third one, he had to bring anything. They approved it in a matter of days and wasted efficiency on it.
Let's point this out just so everyone's clear, because we have a lot of newbies listening, right? And this interview is going to go out into the ether and be listened to in the future. He's talking about somebody who had 3 investment properties, who had, obviously some other assets or at least some resemblance of income, wasn't evidently totally insolvent, they're technically with upside-down properties. If you're actually doing a true, profit and loss, you're insolvent with upside-down properties. But what was the total loss to the bank? Because I heard you say that your borrower was having to contribute about $7,000 to basically walk away scot-clean, free and clear on these. How much did the bank lose?
The three properties together, I believe the mortgages were about $800,000 total. And through the short sales, we gave them about $150,000.
Total for all three?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and that's not unusual. I mean, our great short sale pros, Kim and Chris Darney, they deal with huge numbers like that all the time, and we're dealing with some, down in La Jolla, we have a couple agents that are secretly doing short sales for upper-end folks now. Julie's about to chime in. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that seems to be, I don't want to really necessarily call it a trend, but, we've had some students out in there's Outer Banks that's happening, the Hamptons in New York. You've got some students there, Tim, that, I would say it's discussed less, it's less public, and I think there's a lot of people who have this perception that, this doesn't affect, quote, the rich. What's your experience been with that, Bryan? You have to run into that scenario.
I think what Julie and I are talking about are the more strategic short sales and strategic foreclosures. Are you seeing that in your marketplace?
Yeah, certainly. I actually just did but again, most of the ones that I'm doing, even strategic short sales on, are investment properties or second homes. I just did one for a cardiovascular surgeon that short sold a vacation property out near Disney. He had paid $370,000 for it, and we sold it for $60,000. Now, in that case, he actually has to bring about $20,000 to closing, but they still waived all his deficiencies, so it was a pretty good deal. There was no hardship. The only hardship is you owe more than the property's worth, and the rents aren't covering the mortgage payments.
So, Bryan, can you tell me, I'm looking at the questions on the webinar. Deficiency judgment, guys, basically, it depends on your state, okay? It depends on what kind of mortgage it is. There's a lot of moving parts to this, but basically a deficiency judgment is the mortgage companies going after the borrower after closing for whatever the loss was. So, for example, just keeping it easy, if there's a first mortgage to, ABC Mortgage Company and the house sells for $100, but there was $300 owed, and it was it was a non-purchase money, say they refinanced it or whatever, and it's in a state where they allow deficiency judgments, that mortgage company has the right to pursue. Now, this is on investment properties. Now, if they're following HAFA, which virtually every major lender is, and you as a realtor who's processing short sales know how HAFA works, you very rarely nowadays are going to run into the threat of the deficiency judgments. Though I have noticed that a lot of banks who are supposed to be following HAFA are doing sort of a bastardized version of HAFA. I mean, what's your experience with HAFA so far?
I've actually not done any HAFA short sales.
Okay, because most of your guys are investors, your clients are investors?
Yes, that is correct. And Tim, I want to clarify on the deficiency judgment real fast.
Sure.
Too.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Your explanation is very good. A deficiency judgment, though, if they foreclose on the property, is almost automatic. Okay? It's basically, because it's part of the lawsuit in the foreclosure, right? They have to file papers that, we're foreclosing.
Depending on your state, but yes.
In Florida, correct.
Right.
Yeah, so the judge is going to give them a judgment for the deficiency. On a short sale, it's actually not called a deficiency judgment. What it is they can go after them for a deficiency in Florida, and they may very well just sell that deficiency off to a credit collection agency, at 10 cents on the dollar. Now you got these guys hounding you for the rest of your life.
Have you
I think that's more of a fear.
Bryan, have you read about, don't say I've heard about, right, but have you actually read or experienced credible examples of people that are having deficiency judgments on investment properties or primary residences being filed against them?
I've never seen one.
Okay, so there you go. I haven't either, okay? I haven't. And I have my Google alerts set up for deficiency judgments, and I have all the top states, Arizona, Florida, California, and I'm constantly looking for banks going after deficiency judgments, and I know that they're doing it on a very small scale, but I think some of them are not coming from the servicers per se. I think they're coming sometimes from the private mortgage insurance companies and things like that. But I think it's such a small percent that I really question whether or not there'll ever be a time, even though, you and I can't read the tea leaves here, but I question if there will ever be a time where they go after borrowers for the deficiency judgments. I wonder if that will ever happen, even if they do get judgment, or even if they have the right to pursue the deficiency. I wonder if they'll actually pursue it. I just don't know. I can't imagine the political climate where that's going to be okay. Can you?
No, I can't. And the truth of the matter is, too, Tim, I mean, if you have a legitimate hardship, then you have no money. I mean, what are they going to go after? You can't get blood from a turnip, right? And if you have some money, and if you're able to negotiate with your lender, negotiate a small promissory note. Get rid of the original note completely, and just negotiate a small promissory note, and pay them $50 a month, and then you don't have to worry about it. But
That's
again,
right.
I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV.
Yeah, well, neither am I.
Legal advice.
Nor are we accountants, right?
Or are we accountants? That's right.
That's right. So, but that's just, we're kind of getting into some short sale details, but it's worth mentioning. So one of the things he just mentioned is a great idea. If you do come across, don't be afraid of people that have investment properties that are upside down their properties. Don't be afraid of fluent people. That's, the reason that over a year ago we did the luxury distressed property designation. But don't be afraid of the people that are quote unquote not insolvent. A lot of realtors are still stuck in their minds that, there used to be 3 ways you qualified for doing a short sale: hardship and, other, inability to pay and, all basically insolvency. But anymore, guys, to really qualify for a short sale, you don't really need to have any of those old rules of thumb. I mean, Bryant's talking about dealing with people that have assets that are doing short sales. We have students all the time. I mean, there's a really great example that Julie and I use. A coaching client closed a short sale for someone in La Jolla. The lady had like $3 million in the bank that she'd put on her financial statement. So the bank knew that she had money. And the short sale, Bryant, was for like $600,000. Well, they made her pay. Yeah, and this was a primary, by the way, and she was doing this because she just wanted to move. I think, Julie, wasn't it to Hawaii or something?
Yeah, and, there's been cases where, especially when the agents aren't paying attention, they say things like, well, my client didn't get the paperwork back because they're vacationing right now in Breckenridge and, stuff like that. So it's not that the short sale doesn't close. It's how it closes, how they go about it, So, and I think the other surprising thing that agents are coming across is when they ask their strategic sellers about that, sometimes the sellers say, well, yeah, I expected to have to pay something, versus the agent who assumes, well, gosh, I don't know if I want to ask him that. Sometimes they react as if the bank is asking for something crazy.
Well, but so Julie's point, Brian's point, is that fact, guys, that really everybody who's upside down in their home technically qualifies for a short sale, even if they have the ability to pay. Some people are perpetuating the fact that the inability to pay, or basically being, financially burdened, is the only way you're going to qualify for a short sale. And that's just not true. Now, it was true a long time ago, but it's not true now. Virtually everybody qualifies for a short sale. It doesn't matter what kind of property it is, okay? Commercial, multifamily, whether you're an investor, whether you're a primary, everyone will do a short sale. It's how the details are worked out. Depends on your particular situation. So, guys, literally every single person you're coming in contact with that's upside down in a home, you shouldn't be talking them into a short sale. Some people, as Bryant made a really good point of mentioning earlier, it doesn't matter what their situation is. If they're investors and they're making great return on their investment, they don't really care what the property is quote-unquote worth because they're getting their cash flow from it. So don't be confused by that. And just understand that this opportunity within many of your markets, 50 to 70% of the homeowners are upside down.
Well, Tim, I can't remember exactly which one of the bank execs we were interviewing, but you and I, if you remember this, we asked one of them.
Wachovia.
Yes, Wachovia. That's right. We asked him the exact question, what do you guys do? What do you think about these strategic short sales? And his answer was, well, if they're not paying, they're not paying. We know that a certain percentage of our short sales will be strategic. And, we'd rather have a performing loan than a non-performing loan. That was his answer. So, they know what's going on. And he said a certain percent, we're just going to accept it.
So this goes back to the misinformation, right? So don't be confused. Don't oh my gosh, I want to do short sales. I want to do what Bryant's doing. I want to turn my business and my life around. I want to sort of get in the flow with where where the industry is now, with short sales REOs and really with BPOs. But I'm so confused about who qualifies and who doesn't for a short sale. Here's your answer. Everybody does. Okay? Everybody does. That's the answer. It's just how the details work themselves out. That's what you have to learn. It's not, Bryan, what's the toughest part of doing short sales for you now?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, dealing with homeowners associations is probably the most difficult thing.
Especially in your state.
Yeah, but the short sale itself, I mean, it really, the listing is, I don't even see the properties most of the time. I just send, the people email me and say they want to do a short sale. I send them out a listing package, and it comes across either in the mail or my email, and I put the property on the market and we sell it.
That's so funny you said that, because I know somebody's going to be typing into their Active Rain blog, and then he said he never sees the properties. How can he list and sell a property without seeing it? So why don't you answer that question ahead of time so you don't have to triage it on Active Rain?
Well, we get a photo shoot done at some point. It may be me, it may be my son. Someone's going to walk into the property, but it won't necessarily be prior to listing it. Or I just took one today, and I won't see that one. It's a tenant-occupied property. I had the management company send me pictures.
Well, but the reality of it is that it doesn't become more valuable when you see it as a realtor, right? And when you're dealing with...
I don't think so.
Exactly. And how many different types of floor plans and finishes? You probably got all that stuff pretty much memorized because you've been part of this community as it was getting built. So you don't really need to see them, and that's kind of that's the wonderful thing about doing short sales is all the usual points of resistance that a homeowner is going to have, arguing about the listing term and the price and the commission and how many open houses you're going to do and the fancy home brochures and whether or not you're going to be doing all this other stuff. None of that's even, it never even comes up, does it?
No, it doesn't make it. It's all about what you can do to help them through their situation.
All right, so let's get
listening to them, letting them tell you what that is, because they really do need to tell that story to somebody.
So let's get into some more details. I'm reading some of these questions, and Julie, keep on putting them in my instant messaging, okay?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, so somebody asked, and this is a great question for you, Bryan, how does someone figure out what the heck is going on in their market? Like, they want to know their market stats. You obviously have become a market expert, right? I mean, you know the numbers down to the finite details. How would a realtor obtain your level of skill?
Oh, that's a very good question, Tim, and it's a very important question because, that's our job, right? We have to know our markets inside and out. I know my market because when I started out here, there were only 7,000 people. Now there's 75, so, I've been in it. But the one thing that I do every single day, and I briefly told you this the other day, Tim, is I do my own expired listing solicitations, okay? And every day, very first thing, I look at the MLS hot sheet on the areas that I want to zoom in on, and I know what's come on the market, what's sold, what was pending, what got withdrawn. And just that one exercise, that hour every single day, not Sunday, but 6 days a week, if you just do that long enough, you're actually going to get the knowledge that you need. And go out and look at houses. If you need to really, go out and work some buyers. Go preview properties when you don't have a buyer in your car.
Well, here's one, and I know you're getting started doing this, but doing BPOs, guys, I'm not going to get on my BPO sandbox, but I'll just bottom line it for the sake of conversation. Every single realtor in the country must be doing BPOs. It is your insurance to market instability. Okay, do BPOs, because then you automatically, and you're getting paid to become a true market expert. Sorry, Bryan.
That's okay. After we spoke on Wednesday, Tim, actually this morning, I sent both my agents out a really beautiful list of BPO companies, and I'm pushing them again, so thank you very much. Well, you're going to say, why aren't I doing it, right?
No. Your agents, one of which is your son. As long as somebody's doing it. But you guys, you just asked me to put on my coaching hat, so I'm only going to do it briefly. Everyone should be doing enough BPOs to cover your personal overhead. And then basically if you're having to earn $5,000 a month, you're going to have to ramp up doing approximately 5 BPOs a day. Now, when you start, it's going to be painful, so you're only going to do 1 or 2 a day. But it is very realistic, okay, guys, for you to do 5 BPOs a day if you streamline, if you follow a system. I'm not going to go into a selling mode here, but the fact is that we do have a system that will help you to do BPOs faster. If you want to learn about that, call 866-422-9497. But regardless of whether or not you use our system or you figure it out on your own or somewhere in the middle, here's the bottom line. Please, National Association of Realtors, back me on this. Every broker in the country, back me on this. Please, listen. every single realtor in the country that expects to be around, right, expects to survive the next 12 to 18 months as we go through another correction or flash crash, whatever you want to call it. Bryan and I are going to talk about that in a second. Do BPOs, please. There's no shortage of them. It will make it so that you always have your bills paid. It will make it so that you don't have to have those real estate night sweats. Okay, rant over. So becoming a market expert.
Well, you have to be a market expert. I mean, how can you be in the business of real estate and not know your market? Get into practice of at least at the end of every month, pull up your market area and see what's happening and compare it to the month before. And you've got to know the trends. You've just got to know what's going on.
Well, your MLS, a lot of people, Bryan, this is actually a very technical, fundamental, basic question. They just don't know how their MLS works. That's the answer, truthfully.
Well, you have to go to the classes. I mean, I forced my agents. I mean, you have to know the MLS inside out, backwards. It should be open on your computer all day long. It is the tool. And if you have a good MLS system, which we have an awesome one, I mean, it gives you all the reports and all the statistics. All you got to do is click on a button.
Go ahead, Jules.
Well, I wanted to jump in here. It's something that we always recommend in all of our classes. Everyone has to do CE credit. So in this market, the best, if you've got to sit in a classroom, get it out of your MLS training, get it out of an appraisal class, which I think most agents, that's for a lot of people, that's the last classes they would naturally sign up for. They want to do something a little more exciting, a little bit more fun. But the most useful thing, since you have to get CE anyway, pricing, take an appraisal class that's going to help you with CMAs, BPOs, pricing short sales, and get to know your MLS, Tim, to your guys' point. There's so much more depth to most people's MLSs, especially now where you have archives and histories and things like that. It's a powerful tool, and that also helps your mindset so that if the agent sitting in the next office over says, oh, my gosh, everything's correcting, everything's great, everything's fine, or the opposite, you got to back that up with fact. What's actually happening? It's not what you may feel is happening, but what's actually happening based on fact. I love the idea of spending a half an hour daily to really get to know your market, and you can get out there and preview. There's lots of different things. The answer really is to do it. Don't hide from the facts. The more knowledge is power, and that makes you money.
So, Bryan, you mentioned that you have a team. Tell us about your team.
Well, my son Nathan, he got out of the Marine Corps about 8 months ago. He did 14 years.
Wow.
And he is now out. I know. He is Semper Fi. If buyers don't buy from him, they're probably in trouble.
Yeah. I want to interview him and listen to his closing techniques.
Yeah. Buy from me or I'll kill you. No.
I won't fillet you.
Yeah. But he came on board and he is just fantastic. He was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, so certainly organizational skills and people skills, he's got them both, so he's very, very good. He basically works with all of our international buyers. Him and his wife, they handle that part of the business. And then I have a lady that works for me by the name of Olga, and she's my buyer's agent. Okay, so those two basically work nothing but buyers at this point, even though Nathan is trying to get listings and get into the short sale side of the business as well.
We're getting a surprising number of questions about people wanting you and I to prognosticate a little bit, which unfortunately leads down a road that could put us on the phone for the next 3 or 4 hours. So I pulled out probably, because I know it's something you and I both like to talk about. I read your blog posts. So here's the thing. Let's you and I address some, I think probably some important questions as they relate to you. You mentioned, and I think this is really important, that you're home-based. So the future of and you're a real estate broker and you're in the marketplace. I'm sure you're one of the top producers, certainly one of the leading short sale agents in the country. So home-based versus brick and mortar, what do you foresee, going forward? What is the traditional or the typical, or what is a real estate brokerage, Bryan? How does it interact in this day and age where people are, downloading iPhone apps, and what is your vision?
Well, and I was way ahead of the curve on that, I guess. I've had a virtual office forever, right, for 13 years. Never understood a brick-and-mortar office to begin with. I've never met a realtor yet that can sell a house sitting on their butt in a cubicle. My goal, Tim, is I actually want to be able to handle my entire business via my iPhone, sitting out by the pool.
Or fishing. I watched your video.
Yeah, or fishing. So actually, yeah, and it's actually not that difficult. I mean, it's not like I do a ton of transactions, but I do enough that you would think my phone rings all day long, when the reality is my phone never rings. Everyone communicates with me via email. My sellers know that that's how we communicate, via email and text messages. So it makes my job easier. I mean, obviously I can get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and respond to 20, 25, customer clients in about an hour. And then that's it. And then all I have to do is monitor their responses as they come in during the day. So it's much more efficient, in my opinion, having a virtual office. I don't think buyers and sellers have any desire to walk into a real estate office anymore. They want you to be available on the Internet. They want to see properties on the Internet. We sell houses sight unseen over the Internet, just on video tours and photos, and I really see that. I actually have forms on some of my websites that they can buy a property through a Google document. So it doesn't get any better than that in my mind.
So with regards to this, an interesting question. I haven't actually had this question in a long time, but it's worth mentioning. You own your own brokerage, right? I mean, you're not a RE/MAX agent. You're not a Prudential agent. You're your own company, correct?
I'm Tutas Town Realty. That is correct.
Do you find that being an independent matters? I mean, well, let me put it a different way. Does the lack of an international brand attached to Bryan Tutas, does that matter?
Never.
Okay, so talk about that first. By the way, this is the type of conversation that results in Julie and I never getting invited to speak at any national real estate conventions. But you know what? Again, it's true. It's 100% true. But the fact is, guys, is that Julie and I, well, we support the industry. Certainly we support National Association of Realtors. You'll never hear us saying anything bad about NAR. But we are really agent advocates. That's what we are. And, it's an interesting question as we're entering into this new age of real estate where everyone's got to be more mindful of their overhead. And we're going to, a time in real estate sales, and Bryan and I are going to dig deep in this. This is my next question to him, where, frankly, the demographics they're going through a massive shift, and the baby boomers are not going to be buying like they were, and there's a big time gap between when their kids start buying and they're going to be buying different things. And so there's every reason to believe our industry is going to continue to recoil, if you will, and hopefully maybe there'll be a release of energy of new buying activity sometime in the future. But during this time of transition, overhead is what's going to kill most real estate brokerages. And unfortunately, some of the biggest, most overheady real estate brokerages are these national brands or all these association fees. Now, there is a place for them going forward, obviously, and I personally think that you're going to see some incredible innovation coming from the likes of RE/MAX and Keller Williams and Coldwell Banker and Prudential and, Real Living. You're going to see some amazing innovations as they move forward and adopt to the Bryan Tutases of the world that want to be home-based. But in this time of transition, guys, it's a little bit scary. It's a little uncertain. And, I'm going to ask this question again, Bryan. You've never lost a seller, never lost a buyer, never lost a listing, never had a short sale processor not work with you because of the fact that you weren't attached to a national brand, correct?
No, it never comes up, Tim.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys, these are not saying they don't have value, but put that into your quiver when you're thinking about basically your own personal overhead. So, Julie, did I thoroughly make it so we'll never get invited to speak?
That ought to do it.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. All right, but again, I'm not going to worry about being politically correct. I want to be we're agent advocates. So, Bryan, let's talk about your market forecast. Let's talk about what you're predicting. Maybe we can start micro in your marketplace. We can blow it out macro. What are you predicting? Just wherever you go with that question.
Oh goodness. Well, I definitely have already seen things slow up as far as the amount of sales. After the tax credit, after April the 30th, we had a big push in April, May, and June, obviously getting everything closed. That has certainly slowed up quite a bit. Mortgages in my market are getting very difficult to get. Appraisers are coming in and basing their appraisals, on future things that haven't even happened. They're putting in this declining market, and lenders are just rejecting them outright. In my specific market, I think we're still going to see a lot of investors buying homes cheap, renting them out. I'm starting to see a lot of flipping going on. People are starting to buy houses at auctions and getting really good deals on them and being able to put them back on the market at a good market value and advertise them, not a short sale, not an REO, no banks to deal with, and they're selling them in a matter of days. So I'm starting to see a lot more of that with brokers like myself, that are not me yet, but going to, that are going to start picking up these houses at auctions. As far as the buyers, we're very, very low price, so we do still get a lot of first-time home buyers. FHA is really big in my area. 3.5% down on an FHA, since the values are so low, it's still less than $3,000, so it's still a pretty good deal. My wife and I, we actually just moved into an active adult community, which is right in the middle of Point Siena. It's one of the nicest in the country, but I also feel probably contradictory to you, Tim. I think the baby boomer and active adult community business is going to pick up because I think a lot of us are fed up with having so much stuff, and we just want to get into communities where we don't have to deal with things anymore.
I'm not arguing with you on that. I 100% agree with you if they're priced correctly.
Well, if they're priced correctly, and just to give you an idea, the place that we bought, 70% less than what it was 3 years ago, right? So a very, very good deal. And I think, it's my immediate plans is I'm really, really focusing on the community that we just moved into, because next year I want to be able to sell houses riding around on my golf cart.
On your iPhone.
On my iPhone, yes, which will be mounted on the dashboard of my golf cart. So that's kind of my immediate goal.
So here's a great question, and this is just something that's sort of just what I throw around in my brain occasionally. Is the American dream, Bryant, and don't worry about my opinion on this, I'm just curious what your honest opinion is the American dream still to be a homeowner?
Yes. I believe that to be true. I went through a period of the last 18 months where I was not a homeowner. We had sold off all our investment properties, and I was desperately wanting to own a home again. And I still see people wanting to own homes. Even with rentals, when you can get a rental for $650, $700 a month in Point Siena, you can buy that house and have a lower payment than that.
Well, okay, you keep on going back to that same point, which is so valid and so important, that when the rental prices are in alignment with what the home payment would be, at that point, it is very difficult to come up with a financial argument against buying a home. It truly is, and that's what Brian. That's what you're reinforcing common sense, right?
Well, that's right. That's what we haven't had for a decade, right?
Or longer. But that's truly what you're reinforcing. You're reinforcing common sense. You're saying what the whole country needs to be listening to right now, that, guys, if you want to know where you're, and this is not a true, he said it earlier, he said it well, all, real estate is local, and, it is true, and your individual market conditions might vary, but the fact is, guys, is if you want to know where the bottom is, look to see where your rents are. If it makes sense for somebody to, financially makes sense anyway, for someone to go and rent a house, and it costs them, say, $2,000 a month, whereas buying the same house, especially now that really they have to come up with 10% down and full doc loans, if the payment is going to be significantly more than what the rental will be, why would they not rent? And that's what a lot of the country is still dealing with. I had somebody in San Diego ask on the webinar, what are our predictions for the real estate market in San Diego? Well, let me ask you that question, student, or potential student. Why don't you get into the MLS, and why don't you tell us what the pricing trends are, right? Why don't you go on the MLS and actually do a study and find out in different price segments where homes are, because Brian's correct, in certain pockets you're going to find, maybe in the Gaslight District, I think that's what it's called down in San Diego, you're going to find that some of the areas are doing well. We have a great superstar down there, Greg Newman, who's the #1 Prudential agent in the world, and I know he's doing well, but you just have to know where the little pockets are. But going forward, I think it's interesting, Brian. So I'm going to ask you kind of hopefully an interesting question. Why were you so anxious to become a homeowner again? You had really gotten stung on a financial basis. Why were you anxious to be a homeowner again?
Well, yeah, I did really get stung. Thank you.
Well, you mentioned that you had properties that you lost. I'm not throwing you under the bus here, buddy.
No, you're not. Yeah, that's fine. We actually sold our primary residence in 2008, and we sold most of our investment properties in 2008 because I knew they were dropping quick. So I needed to get out from under those, and on those, we actually brought big checks to closing. We didn't short sell any of them. But we did short sell 2 of our investment properties this year and just closed on them recently. And my only regret was that I didn't short sell the other properties. I could have held on to a lot of cash.
You mean you didn't wait and short sale them and make it so that you basically didn't have to bring big checks to closing, correct?
Well, that's exactly right. Because in 2008, even though it sounds like it was so recent, but I think the attitude was a little bit different. People weren't talking really about strategic defaults and strategic short sales in 2008, right? It was all, well, you need to honor your obligation and make your mortgage payments and blah, blah, blah. So I did. And the fact of the matter is, I didn't want to ruin my credit, right? I needed to pay these things. So I did. But if you could read the future and known that we'd have gone through, the health issues and the business issues and everything else, it certainly would have benefited to hold on to those and short sell them later and kept all the cash.
Well, and let's dig deeper into that just in a little quick side trip here. The fact is that with HAFA, it really, this is such a touchy subject since we're in the real estate industry, but really HAFA, I think in a lot of ways has made it so that someone can, the incentives to do a short sale have just gone through the roof versus all the people that were doing strategic walkaways. And what folks are realizing is that, it's kind of the whole strategic foreclosure thing, though it is a big movement. 60 Minutes did a big news story on it. You guys know we've been talking about it on the blog forever. But now what I suspect is going to happen, Bryan, and you're going to be the direct beneficiary of this, is going to move away from being like strategic and it's okay to walk away. Now it's going to be like, well, you want to go and short sale it. So we're going to see it move away from the strategic short or strategic default movement, right, the just walk aways of the world. It's going to move towards literally being called strategic short sales, right? Does that make sense?
Oh, well, absolutely, yeah, because, walking away from the property, it was bad in 2008, and it's bad in 2010, right? It's always been a bad thing to do. You need to try to sort it out.
And Fannie Mae came out a couple weeks ago and basically said they're going to go after, people that they deem to be strategic defaulters with, ruthless abandon. Now, who knows if that'll happen or not, but that is great information, guys, on the blog, timandjulieharris.com. That's great information for you to use when you run into all these folks that are saying, well, we're just going to walk away. We've just decided to stop making the payment. You need to say, well, did you realize that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac and here's the press release, here's exactly what they said. Now, doesn't it make sense for you to do a short sale? Listen to what Bryant's saying. Bryant, I'm going to kind of start wrapping this up. And a question that I wrote down earlier, I didn't know how to integrate it. But so you were, in your own words, kind of behind the trend for justifiable reasons. You were preoccupied with other more important stuff. But you were behind the shift. It kind of caught you by surprise, I think. And if I'm overemphasizing it, I apologize. So are you ahead of the curve now? Are you, in your mind, are you preparing for what's next? And if you are, what do you think is going to be next? What specifically are you preparing for now to happen in the real estate industry?
Well, that's a great question, Tim. I think I'm ahead of the curve. I think I'm focused now, and again, very specific to my market, but definitely focused more on buyer side through my agents because the investors, even though they've sold off a little bit because of the exchange rates and stuff, it still makes a lot of sense for them to buy properties. And I think we're going to focus probably more on first-time home buyers, which I wanted to finish that last question you asked me, Tim, is why did I want to be a home buyer? It's because I didn't want to be at the mercy of a landlord who's not making his mortgage payments. Okay, and I think a lot of people, especially in my area, that's a huge, huge issue. People paying their rents and then getting booted out of the house because it got foreclosed on or the seller doing a short sale. So a lot of people have fear of being a tenant, and I was one of them. So I had to solve that problem immediately so I could focus on other things. But, I think in my market, definitely we are going to I think I'm in an expansion mode. I think I do want to bring on some more agents, virtual agents, just because I want to do less of the hands-on work myself and definitely focus more on investor buyers and continue doing short sales. I think short sales are going to be around for many, many years.
So you're right. We should have finished that last question. The reason that you went back to being a homeowner was because financially it was the same as renting, but also the other thing is that you wanted that security, right?
Well, that's exactly correct. Yeah, I needed a place to plan.
And you wanted to, have the house eventually paid off if it's not paid off already, and you wanted to be in a situation where, that was your place, that was your cave for you and your family for years to come. Now, here's the difference. How different, Bryant, is that mentality about owning a home, these words that we're using now, versus the bubble? It's completely polar opposite, isn't it?
Oh, that's exactly correct. Yeah, I didn't buy it for an investment. I didn't buy it so I could pull my equity out in 2 years. I bought it for security, and that's the way housing should be.
And always was, and will be probably the rest of our, careers, I think.
I would think so. Yeah, I think the mindset has definitely changed.
Okay.
I hope it has.
Yeah, I think it has too. And back when Julie and I were selling real estate in Ohio, that is why people bought real estate. If you did not go and talk to some homeowner about what a great investment a piece of real estate was going to be, because very rarely was it a great investment. People buy homes for security. People buy homes for the fact that they want to have a place to hang their hat. They want to have a place to build memories. And guys, this is an important message. These subtle points that Bryan is saying, I hope you're paying attention, because I asked him the question, are you preparing yourself for what's next? And he has, throughout this whole interview, told you how he already has. As an example, what he just said, how he answered that question. So when he's talking to prospective buyers, he's not telling them the investments, it's a great time to buy, you're going to make money. The things that if you started selling real estate really in the past 5 years, you only know how to sell real estate, chances are, off greed-based motivators. You're going to make so much money, you're going to be able to pay this one off, and you're going to be able to flip houses and all the rest of it, right? But you heard Bryant when I asked him that question. He said, that wasn't even part of what he said. He said you have to have a place to live. Financially, it makes sense because you're not going to save any money renting. It's going to be a great place for you to eventually pay off and not have a house payment. So, guys, you see how he's already shifted, and he's talking about being a virtual agent. Now, he already is a virtual agent, but he wants to build his brokerage virtually. The cool thing is Bryant, when you add an agent, your incremental cost for that agent is?
Zero.
Yeah, nice, right? No cubicle, no staples, no coffee, no nothing. Hey, Julie,
no.
Questions? Did I get to all of them? I know there were some good ones.
We have so many students that are in coastal areas that are either resorts or resort-like, a bit of a second home market, third home market. A lot of questions about how do you find international buyers? You've been kind of referring to that. I know your buyer agents are working with international buyers. Do you have some suggestions for how to connect with that type of a client?
Well, our business has kind of always been leaning towards international buyers. When I first got into real estate, my wife and I owned a guest service company selling attraction tickets and transportation to vacationers. But currently, I actually have a business partner that's in France, who's a British guy, and builds houses in Bulgaria, who sends me a lot of buyers. But we actually advertise on international websites. Now, over here, we always think Realtor.com and Zillow and Trulia, that you would be talking Greek if you were talking to someone in France or England. They don't use those websites. Okay, they have their own websites, Rightmove, Dalton Properties. So you need to know where they're searching for properties, and that's where you need to be. Okay, and that boils back down to, always knowing who your audience is, right? You got to know who you're pitching, who you're selling, and then you've got to figure out where they're at, and then you figure out how to get in front of them. And that's how we get our international buyers.
Diane from Edwardsville, Illinois, asked a question. This is kind of an interesting one. Do you think the government will take away the mortgage interest deduction, and how will that affect us? Have you been paying attention to that conversation, Bryant?
Yeah, briefly, Tim. To be honest with you, I don't really watch the news.
Okay.
I cut my TV off about 18 months ago.
That's good. Yeah, Diane.
It was very depressing.
It is and it isn't, right? I mean, but the fact is, Diane, I do think they're going to get rid of it. They've been floating around that idea for the past 12 months, and I've been seeing more fervor coming out of the White House about getting rid of it, and I would be honestly surprised if mortgage interest was still deductible a year from now. But really, what does that save you? If you actually were to go to your last year's return and look to see what the actual savings was, I mean, if it was $1,000 in most cases, I think the national average was like $600. Hey, look, $600 is $600. And I want to save as much money on taxes as the next guy, but you can see how it's going to be very difficult in a time where our country is in such dire straits to argue for the deduction. And we're the only country in the world that has that. So, I mean, there you go.
Yeah, well, that's right, too, Tim. And again, well, just for an example, in my market, it wouldn't make any difference at all, right? When you're paying a mortgage on a $50,000 or $60,000 house, you don't have enough interest to write off because you're still taking your standard deduction.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, so Diane, again, asked the question. I'll throw this one at you. Is it possible to get started without the affiliation with a large franchise? You are very experienced. How did you make that break?
Well, I never made a break because I was never with them to begin with. When we got into real estate, I was actually the only agent in a management company. No one else even had real estate licenses. I had a rent-a-broker for about 2 years. So I just really got involved in my board of realtors, made a lot of connections. I always, from day one, advertised my own brand, which was me and my wife. We don't advertise company brands. It's always, Broker Bryant and TLW, the lovely wife. That's what we advertise.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter who I work for. I mean, I could go to work for anyone tomorrow, and it wouldn't miss a beat. It wouldn't make any difference at all. You don't want to be married to your brand unless it's your own brand.
That's right, and you should own your phone number on your signs, all of that stuff. So it keeps you in control. Interesting question. Can you talk about the short sale and buy program? I've seen buy one. How long after a short sale? According to FHA financing, Brian, again, this isn't your cup of tea. You can pass on this question. Does it take using current regulations before someone can buy again using Fannie Freddie backed mortgages?
Yeah, that's really not my area.
24 months is the answer. So according to the current regulations, and you guys can read about this on the blog again, or if your students just, essentially pay attention, you can buy again within 24 months. And Fannie Freddie has just made it so that if you do a foreclosure or what they deem to be a strategic foreclosure especially, that you'll be out of the housing market for at least 5 years. Now, in those 24 months following your short sale, you do have to keep your nose clean. You do have to be able to qualify in other ways. And just because you qualify doesn't mean, that they're going to allow you to walk in with no money down. It could qualify with 20% down. So put that into perspective. But definitely when you're talking with prospective sellers, you can tell them, because it's a fact, using current Fannie Freddie regulations, that if they do a short sale versus a strategic default, again, getting back to the point that people should be doing short sales, that they can get back in the housing market in 24 months if they choose to. All right. Okay. So
Tim, real quick, that actually brought up another thought, another market trend, and something that we're doing in our business is we have international investors that are buying properties, and instead of renting them out at $750 a month and having to pay all the maintenance and taxes and HOA fees and everything assorted with managing a rental property, we're turning right around and selling them with owner financing. So we're getting people in that have been through short sales and foreclosures that haven't made a mortgage payment in a month, a year and a half, so they do have some cash, and we're able to put them right into the house immediately on an owner financing and give them 5 years to sort it out.
Okay, and so that's like a whole different conversation, but absolutely brilliant. And every single people where the numbers make sense, oh my gosh, is that a brilliant idea? Because you can put buyers right back into houses, and, essentially the owners can get, Julie and I did some of those deals too when we were actively selling, and we did a lot of lease purchases and things like that for folks that had troubled credit but had money down. And really, it's a no-brainer for the owner, especially if they own it outright, because they are going to get a killer rate of return. And I am not sure how many people actually end up closing on it, but I bet you it's less than 10%.
Yeah, well, it's a good way to go. Now, ours are putting, we're getting $20,000, $25,000 down on a $100,000 house, so they've got a pretty good incentive to stay. But yeah, you're absolutely right, lease purchases and all of that. But I just wanted to bring that up because that's other, things that are going to be happening in the future, exactly because we're losing so many people that are losing their credit and not able to go to a normal means of getting a mortgage.
There was a report yesterday that said 25% of all Americans right now have what would be considered a bad credit score. I don't know if you read that. But so that, yeah, hand in hand with what he's saying. All right, so a couple more questions. We're going to wrap this call up. Is there a general rule of thumb for that you use when pricing a short sale? And he says offers right. Basically, how do you price them to get offers right away that you don't price them too low that the banks will reject them?
Well, again, that's going to depend on your area. Now, the way I price my short sales is I pretty much price them right at market value, and then I do a reduction every 7 to 10 days or as needed. I want to be able to, my goal is always to have it under contract. Unless it's looming foreclosure, I like to get it under contract within 30 to 45 days. That way I can show a history to the lender because pricing is, in my opinion, critical on a short sale. You have to get close to market value or you're just spinning your wheels.
Bryant's wife here. Excellent job, you guys. What a wonderful interview. I'm impressed. So I think we did a good job. We got the seal of approval.
No, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Let's do it again.
No, that was your wife.
Oh, that was my wife.
Yeah, she just put a comment in the webinar.
After she's cooking that chicken and rice yet, I'm hungry.
Uh-oh. I'm not going to ask her that. All right, good. So, Bryan, I'm going to let you wrap the call up. Anything else you want to say out there? Remember, there's a lot of agents that are listening now live and in replay, and, anything you want to pass along to them. There's a lot of people out there, agents in particular, that are don't know really what to do. They think they need to move forward with what we talked about in the short sales, but they have so many ties, mooring lines, to use a nautical term, to the way that it used to work. Help me to get across to them that those days are over and they need to move forward with what this market is all about. Because you've been there, done that, and you did it at a very high level. What would you say to those folks that are still on the shore holding on to their ship?
Well, if you still have that mindset that you're waiting on things to get back to normal, my suggestion is, go get a job.
If you can.
If you can. But the reality of it is don't overthink things. You have to move forward. You just have to jump into the market, get in front of as many people as you can, find out what their problem is, and then try to solve it. I mean, that's what we do. Don't let short sales scare you. You don't have to know everything about a short sale to do one. Just jump in, get started. There's a lot of people out there that can help you. Tim can help you. We can help you. Whatever you need done.
Right.
The main thing is to do it.
Are you? And it's interesting. I don't feel any pessimism from you. I feel. You know what? In a lot of ways, I feel a nice calmness coming from you when I talk with you. You sound very like you've got, you're not worried. You're not losing sleep over the market. You're not worrying about if there's additional depreciation. Where does that confidence come from?
Well, I think, I think having done this for so many years makes a huge difference, right? I mean, we've had our ups, we've had our downs. And to be honest, I guess about 2 years ago, I spend the first 2 hours of every day as mine, right? I just be quiet. I do the things that I need to do, and I get my head focused around what I need to do, and then I just do it. I'm just moving forward. I have confidence that if I run across any issues, I know how to solve them, or I can find someone that can solve it for me. So I don't worry about things that may or may not happen in the future. I live in the moment, and in the moment, I need to be moving forward to find someone to help sell or buy a house.
And guys, it also comes from, and he said it again very subtly and with a lot of class, which I really like about you, Bryan. He has the skill set, and he knows that his skills are what this market demands. He knows he has put himself in the position to be able to be of service to others, and he's not afraid to learn. He's not afraid to change. And, Bryan, if we're being honest, you're excited about the opportunities this market is presenting to you and your family as far as, the growth of your business. That's the reason you're talking about when everyone else is closing up their brokerages, you're expanding or thinking about expanding yours. That's kind of a crazy thought in an area that's 70% depreciation and, vacant homes, and you're talking about expanding. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's more challenging. I mean, let's face it, anyone could have sold a house 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, it was easy. And you lose kind of the, it's the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And that's what I love about this job. And right now it just happens to be the thrill of victory, so that's a good thing, right?
Well, amen. So, Bryan, listen, thank you sincerely for being our superstar this week. Really love your contribution. You're making it in a very subtle way. You're, I think, a leader I know you're a leader on short sale superstars in your own community. Certainly on Active Rain, you're a leader. And you know what? You wear that leadership role well. You wear it without really, there's no ego involved. There's no drawing attention to yourself. There's no really, it's not I'm right and you're wrong. You're just basically there saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've done. This is what I'm going to do. And guess what? You can do the same thing. And I really admire that. So thank you for being this week's superstar.
Well, thank you very much, Tim and Julie. I appreciate you guys inviting me this week.
So wonderful. So, guys, if you want to listen to past Superstar interviews, of course, go to the blog, timandjulieharris.com, and click on the big button that says Superstar Interviews. I heard Julie click on. Julie, are you wanting to say something? Okay, your Julie's phone just died. No worries. So on behalf of Julie, myself, and all the faculty and staff at Harris Real Estate University, I want to thank you, Bryan, and your lovely wife and your team and everyone else for the contributions you're making to our industry. All of you who have joined us live for today's Superstar interview, and those of you who will listen to it and replay, please listen to this again. Lots of subtle little points, a lot of reinforcing things that maybe intuitively you guys already knew that you need to take action on. It's not too late for you. This interview is happening here, July 16th, 2010. Now, whether you're listening to this interview in, July 16th, 2015 or not, the lessons that you learned from Bryan are still applicable. You can overcome adversity. You can survive, and not just that, you can thrive in this marketplace. Just please do not fight any longer. Do not resist anymore the fact that the rules have changed, and you can be part of the new game. You can adapt. You can succeed. And guess what, guys? You can succeed at a higher level than you ever did or could have in the bubble. So just keep that in mind. It's all about opportunity if it's coming from a place of abundance and certainly of being of service to others. So on behalf of Julie, myself, and all the faculty and staff at Harris Real Estate University, I want to sincerely thank Bryan Tutas and his family for being our superstars this week, and everyone have a wonderful weekend.